No one out there has money issues. They all have money symptoms. We just have to examine our behaviors, our habits, change them, and we get different results.
How to create the money, how to create the income, how to take that and multiply it to create the actual freedom. The freedom is what I want.
The point you want to get to is where your money works harder for you than you did for it. That's where your freedom is.
Stick to the habits now. No matter how old you are when you're starting this, you can get to that point.
I've got my businesses, they're doing well, I'm making money, I'm speaking on some of the largest stages, I'm masterminding. They find a tumor in my bladder. I got to shut everything down. I had 3 surgeries, I had 57 treatments. The one thing I didn't have to fight was I didn't have to fight it financially.
You have one of the most simple frameworks I think I've ever seen, no matter where someone is starting.
I don't care if it's $5.
How does that look?
Let's talk tactically.
Okay. Mel, welcome to Powerhouse Women.
Oh my God, it's so good to be here and live.
Listen, there have been a few lucky gentlemen to sit in the hot seat of the Powerhouse Women podcast. And I actually want to share for everybody why you are here. Not only are you brilliant when it comes to all things building your money machine, we're going to talk about that, but you are one of the most supportive friends that I've ever had. We met through a mastermind last year, and you are actually a big fan of the Powerhouse Women podcast. You will text me often sharing what you got from episodes. So it just goes to show men can also listen to the Powerhouse Women podcast.
I listen to it all the time. It's so good.
Thank you. And now you get to add your value to our listeners. And I'm so grateful because this topic is one that if I had to pick one thing that has really, really changed Elliot's and my whole life in the last 5 years, it's been understanding the concept that you wrote your book around. And we all may have heard the idea that money doesn't grow on trees. We may not have a money tree in our backyard, but we're going to talk today about how you can actually and should build a money machine.
Absolutely.
But I want to actually start at the beginning because you share a really powerful story at the beginning of the book about your son. And I think it's one of those pivotal moments that when we look back, that changed everything about how you were approaching your career, your wealth building. So take us back to that moment and tell us what happened.
Yeah, I say at the hands of a 6-year-old, I got taught the greatest money lessons and business lessons of my life. I was a single full-time dad. My son came to live with me full-time at 5.5 years old. And I was an entrepreneur. It happened to be the same year that he came to live with me is the same year that I got shoved out by my partners. So all of a sudden I had my son, I had a brand new home, $300,000+ in debt, no clients, no cash flow. And I'm sitting back saying, what am I going to do? And I did what most entrepreneurs would do, is that I just jumped on the treadmill. I dug my heels in and I started to run and I started to get clients and I started to get cash in and things started to look good. And I'm looking at Jeremy and saying, dude, we're going to be okay. We don't have to sell the house. We don't have to do anything. And one day he comes running in from school. He says, Daddy, I drew a picture of you at school today. Now he was so excited. It was like, it was one of those moments you just had to stop everything and give him the attention. And so I kneel down and he hands me this picture. And there I am in blue felt tip pen, stick figure, and I'm standing in front of 2 computer screens and a phone in each ear. And it was in that moment I said, I am screwing up the greatest gift that I was given, and that's to be a dad. I had to figure something out because it was easy for me to look at it and say, hey, but kid, we need this. We need the profits. We need to do these things so we can have the roof over our heads, so we can do the things that we want to do. And yet, children have such a simple, easy view of life. And he didn't understand what profits were. He didn't understand any of that. And he didn't care about the profits. What he cared about was my presence. And it was that situation where I knew that I can either go by the way of excuses and say, here's why, and justifying and say, there'll be a time, or find a different way and say, if I was going to build this from the ground up, how would I do it differently? How do I make sure that he is served first, that life is served first, and that it allows me the freedom of choice to be with him when I need to be with him, when he needs me there, and also give me the freedom to serve, to allow my entrepreneurial journey to coexist with my parental journey.
Mm. And whether it's the journey of an entrepreneur or a hardworking parent who's in corporate America, if we really look back at the roots of where this drive to continue working, succeeding, or where the belief comes from that that's the only way to create success, what you're essentially doing is taking on that belief and switching the paradigm, that you don't actually have to sacrifice the ambition or the success or the impact. It's really the impact that you want to make. There's just a different way to do it that I think, especially since I mentor so many newer entrepreneurs, a lot of them, and I for sure have been in this state before, are just focused on how to create the money, how to create the income. And you have a really beautiful way of distinguishing between that phase where you're just figuring out how do you bring the money in. But then I think the part that most of us aren't ever taught until we read your book, how to take that and multiply it to create the actual freedom. That I know, if I'm speaking for myself, the freedom is what I want.
It's so important. Yeah, you're right. We don't actually want the money. We want what the money allows us to do. The generosity, the choice, the options, the alternatives, all of that. That's what we want. So money isn't the purpose. It's a result. It's not the purpose. And growing up, whether we're in corporate America or entrepreneurs, we were always taught about this idea of earning. Let's just go get a good job, go make a good living, go do that. But we never got taught or really talk about how do you make a good life? How do you really make that work? And I think part of it is this, because you hear it all the time when they say, well, you need work-life balance. And that's what they told me when I got this picture. They go, you need work-life balance, Mel. And yet, if you think about a balance, you can envision that there's two counterweights on opposite ends playing tug-of-war, and you're in the middle. How is that supposed to feel good? And it really isn't about finding balance in our life. It's about finding harmony. And harmony is driven by intent. And when we're intentional with the choices we make at the time and the seasons that we're in, all of a sudden, we don't feel that conflict that balance might create, and we feel the harmony. And so what I needed to do is find how I can intentionally decide what I'm going to do with the money, earning the money, with my relationship with Jeremy, now my relationship with my wife, and doing all those things that allowed me to not create just wealth, but to create richness in my life. And that richness is from making sure that each moment counts.
Yes. Okay. So I know even just from that so far, our listeners are probably like, okay, great. So now let's get to the plan. And there's so many other parts of your story I'm going to pull out as we go along. But if someone is in that place where they've got the start of the creating the money, but maybe they're realizing, okay, there just seems to never really be enough of the money to then invest or start to multiply. You have one of the most simple frameworks I think I've ever seen someone put together. It's one of your strengths is helping to really distill it down into a very understandable, very actionable plan, no matter where someone is starting. So knowing that you're speaking to people who are ambitious, hardworking, they're on the way to creating that really big impact and the income that comes along with it. What do you say to the person who's like, I don't have enough money coming in right now to even start thinking about the future? Let's start to break it down into the tangible action steps.
So this is a great question. I think the first thing we need to understand is your ability to create wealth is less about the money and more about behaviors. It's more about choice and decisions. I truly believe that no one out there, and I know that some people will go, you don't know my situation. No one out there has money issues. They all have money symptoms. They're symptoms of the behaviors, the choices, and decisions they made in the past. And I know that that's confronting for folks when I say it, when I'm coaching or I'm speaking. It's confronting, but it should be uplifting too, because that means that we just have to examine our behaviors, our habits, our decisions, change them, and we get different results. So we are actually in control. And so what tends to happen is that when we try to build wealth, we think, well, when I make more, then I'll start making the decisions, the habits, and the behaviors. And the fact is that I don't care if it's $5. I don't care if it's $2. I don't care if it's $10. What I care is that you're exercising the muscle. It's going to the gym. And the first time you go to the gym, you don't get on the bench and put a bunch of 45-pound plates and think that you're not going to crush your chest. You're going to go to the gym. You're going to go to the small weights. You're going to start getting the muscles used to it. And that's what we have to do with our money. So even if you could only find $5, then just put it in a high yield cash account and start building the muscle. $5 a week. $5 a month, whatever it is. People ask me when my first granddaughter, Emily, was born, what are you going to do for her? And I said, well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give her $500 in an account. And then I'm going to put $25 a week away. So $5 a day. I'm going to do that for 20 years. And the person I was talking to says, you're only going to give her $20,000. You can afford more than that. Quit being so cheap. I said, hold on a second. You never pass on assets without passing on skill sets. And so when Jeremy was 10 is when I started talking about money with him. Well, when Emily starts to get older, she's only 2.5, I got a little time, we start to teach her the skill sets. That $20,000 that I give her with the skill sets by the time she's 60 is $1.5 million. So for a coffee a day, we set her up to have $1.5 million. Now, granted, there's going to be more, but the point being is that it doesn't take a lot to make a lot if we just get in the game with whatever we have and stay in the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, here's the thing. I have heard that before, but it's back to what you said. We don't have money problems. It's money symptoms. That was actually a little confronting when I read that in the book, because I can think back to the version of me that really did think it was a problem of not having enough to get started. But what I love about your work is it's actually an invitation into a paradigm shift that can start no matter the amount coming in. But talk to us about, so the book is about how to create your money machine. Break down exactly what you mean by your money machine.
So there are two journeys we need to be on financially. One is the one that they tell us about, the earnings journey. So you have an earnings machine. It could be your salary. It could be your business. It could be your side gig. You have an earnings machine, and we've been told that. And we think that the earnings machine is where we're going to find control, freedom, and all the stuff. And it's not. We're going to find cash. We should find fulfillment and some impact. We're providing solutions. We're creating value. But never in there did anyone say you're going to have control and freedom. The challenge is that they don't tell us about the second machine. The second machine is the money machine. We need to take the cash or a piece of the cash that we generate from the earnings machine to build the money machine, to create a machine that the money is working for us. The point you want to get to is where your money works harder for you than you did for it. And when you get there, what ends up happening is that's where your freedom is. That's where your legacy is. That's where your control is, because now you can live by choice. And so what we want to do is slowly start to build that. And what we teach, or what I teach, is that there is a hierarchy. There is a priority in which your dollars need to be used to make it easier to make that happen. Now, the tendency with people is this. Imagine this for a moment. You decide that you've got a business and you want to hire a bunch of people. You're going to bring in 20 people. You interview them. They're great candidates. You bring them into the room. You hire them all. You got them in the boardroom and you sit and you look at them and you say, here's the deal. I don't have a job description for you. I don't have goals for you. I don't have tasks for you, but I want to 10X my business in the next 2 years.
Oh my
Have
gosh.
at it. I mean, like, what's the chances of us being successful? And yet, that's exactly what we're doing with our money.
I'm laughing. This is the laugh of, yeah, you're right. That's so true. That's so true.
It really, yeah. And I'm guilty. Pretty much everything that I teach is because I screwed it up, and I survived. I mean, everything from losing 1/3 of everything I own, I survived and everything. And I think that we need to understand that every single dollar that comes into our life must have a job description. And so this dollar might be to pay the mortgage. This dollar might be to pay for the mani-pedis. This dollar might be to get the new iPhone. But we have to define the job description for each dollar because they become our employees. And they're better than any employee out there because they're the only employees that will work for you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. They take no holidays. They take no PTO. And that's what we want to do. But too often we leave it for chance. We leave it for later and we're not specific. And so what happens is then we're on Instagram, and I'm guilty of it. I just bought $350 worth of shirts on Instagram.
It's just funny how that happens. How do they know exactly what I don't need to buy?
Oh my God. And then once you even look at one, then all these ads come in.
You know what? I'm actually realizing the shirt I'm wearing right now was purchased off of an Instagram ad. And that's just perfect.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it wasn't in the job description of the dollars, but you just spent it. And I want to be really clear because I think some people can misconstrue what I'm saying is, oh, he's saying not to buy things. Oh, no, I'm not. I'm going back to making sure that you're intentional with what you're doing. What I want to do, because I don't want to tell people to not buy things, not enjoy life, because here's what I know. If we don't enjoy the path to financial freedom, we will not enjoy the path in financial freedom. And so what that means is we actually need to be really intentional and clear on what drives our joy. And those top 3 things, let's spend smartly on those. But let's not find those things that, because someone on TikTok or Instagram, that looks cool, I'm going to do it. But if it's really not bringing lasting joy to you, then don't make it a priority on the spending. But don't forsake the lasting joy on the journey if you can do it smart by virtue of saying, I'm going to live on, as Dave Ramsey says, beans and rice, and then I'll enjoy it. Because just as much as building wealth is a habit, enjoying wealth is a habit. And if we have not learned how to enjoy it, we might have it. How many people do you know have a ton of money, but they're miserable because they never learned to enjoy it?
Okay, so what does it tangibly look like for someone who's starting from scratch in terms of not having those job descriptions? Is it as simple as sitting down and looking at expenses versus income and starting to create, is it like a budget? I think I want to get into the psychology of, I feel like when I hear you talk about it, it's different than that because it's actually giving the dollars a job before they're earned versus retroactively looking at like where I spent and what almost like my life profit margin is. So take someone like Elliot and I. So we're really interested in investing in more real estate. The next thing we're saving up for is whatever down payment we'll need, whatever financially we're going to need to buy our next investment property. So for someone who's got maybe a longer term financial goal like that, what does that look like? And then maybe for someone who's like, you're telling me I can start with $5. How does that look? Is it just opening up an investment account? Like talk to me as though I'm in kindergarten and I don't know.
Let's talk tactically.
Okay.
But everything that you want to do has to stem from your life's vision. Now, I had a conversation with a family member yesterday. why would I even worry about a vision if I don't think I'm going to get there? And I go, but isn't it better to get 80% to the vision than not even know what the vision for your life is? And so everything should be informed from the vision, because people will call me up or they'll send me a text. They say, I just came into $10,000. Where do I invest it? Here's the problem. The vision informs the plan. The plan informs the strategy. The strategy informs the tactics. The tactics are, where do I put the 10,000? But if we start with the tactics, we might put the 10,000 in the right account for the wrong reason and not fulfill the vision or the plan. So we actually have to look at it and say, first things first, be clear and be okay to dream and have the vision. Now we can sit back and say, okay, how do I step into it? What do I need to do? Tactically, especially in today's times, I would simply open up a high yield savings account. Now, there's 3 characteristics to a high yield savings account that have to be present. Otherwise, you don't do it. 1, it needs to have a high yield, which right now is about, at the time of our recording, 5.5%. It needs to be 100% liquid, okay? Meaning that if I need the money, I can get it within 24, 48 hours, okay? It needs to have 0 fees on it, because I'm not going to pay a fee for them to have my money. And then the actual third thing is that it needs to be 100% insured. So I want it safe, okay? Now, what I would do is, if it's $5, it's $10, if it's $4, a down payment. If you know that you're going to need this money in the next 3-5 years, we don't want to put it in the stock market, because the stock market can have volatility. In the long term, the market goes up 8 out of 10 years. But in the short term, we have volatility, and we don't want to be in a situation where I need the money, but the market's down, and now instead of having 100,000 there, I got 70,000, and I don't have enough for the house. So what we want to do is put it in a high yield cash account. All our short-term money is in there. Our tax money, our emergency fund money, our sinking funds for short-term purchases, our parking place for future investments. And this is what I want them to do. So $5, $10 is all you can do. Put it in a high yield cash account. You're going to get 5%, okay? It's not great guns, especially at those low dollar amounts, but you're developing the muscle, you're making something, it's going to grow. And then at some point down the road, as you start to get a little more money in there, could be $1,000, it could be $2,000, then we're going to turn around and move it to an investment account. It'll be a discount brokerage account somewhere like a Vanguard, a Schwab, a Fidelity, where there isn't a lot of fees. There aren't a lot of transaction fees and costs associated with it. And then we're just going to invest it for the long term. And so at the very beginning, if you're not sure where to go, just get a high yield cash account, high yield savings account, and just start there. Start putting the money away while you're educating, while you're learning, while you're growing it. And then we make a decision on how to invest it down the road.
Yes. That's so doable. And it also, I'm just like acknowledging that I think I've talked to so many entrepreneurs, and even myself had found myself in this mindset in the past, thinking that I just need to earn more money. I just need to out earn the problem. This life that I see that I want for myself, I just want to get there faster. Yeah. And it's just, how do I bring in more? But the older I get, I guess, the more I realize that in life, there aren't many things that happen overnight that are lasting and that are really what I want. So what I love about this is it really is, it's so simple, but it's just as simple and easy not to do. To think, yeah, I'm going to start it next month. I'm going to start it next year. I'm going to start it when I'm making X amount. But the simple diligence of starting with whatever you can, even if it's the $5 to $10.
So my son's 33, his wife's 30, 2 grandchildren, 3 homes, multi-million-dollar net worth. I started teaching him at 10. He started doing things at 16, okay? In another 5 years, the critical mass that they will have, they won't have to worry about a thing. but it's the discipline. Now, he pushed back on me a lot, saying, Dad, you're so conservative. Are you, and I did some things with him where it was matching and all that stuff. But now he's looking at it going, we can breathe.
Thank you.
Yeah. And here's the thing we need to realize, and I needed to realize this. There is something called the wealth flatline. And we tend to believe that if I need $3 million in 10 years, that I need to earn $300,000 a year. We think wealth growth is linear, straight line, but it's not, because we have this thing called the wealth flatline. There's the very beginning of your wealth journey that you'll be investing, you're listening to Mel, you're reading the book, you're doing the stuff. And after 3-4 years, you look at it and you go, I made $67. This is stupid. Okay. And you quit. The problem is that on the other side of the wealth flatline is the acceleration zone. That's where your money starts to grow faster than you could ever make. And the only way to eat up the wealth flatline is time. It's the only way to eat it up. And so you got to get in the game and stay in the game long enough to pass the wealth flatline so you can get to the acceleration zone. I didn't understand this. I was working at a major consulting firm in downtown Los Angeles, and I literally decided that I wanted to quit one day, walked in and quit, cashed out my 401k, and went to Japan. Whole nother story, okay? But I went to Japan, but here's what I did. I was in the middle of the wealth flatline. But when I quit and cashed out my 401k, what did I do? I went right back to the beginning. So all the time on that wealth flatline, I got no credit for. I had to start all over again when I got back. And I look at how much more wealth I would have if I just stayed the course and allowed that to grow.
Yeah.
And so too often we think that we'll see immediate results. But it's time that we have to, when we talk about wealth, we have to think in decades and not years.
I heard a crazy stat on a podcast just yesterday that was perfectly tied to what we're talking about here about Warren Buffett and how his net worth up until his 60s was not something you would ever read about in newspapers. It was like something crazy, like 80 to 90% of his wealth was built after he was 60 because of the compounding.
He got way into the acceleration zone, and now the numbers are so large that you can't keep up with them. Right. Now, if you have a big shovel, in other words, you're making a lot of income and you're not spending it on all kinds of stuff and luxuries and you're putting it away, you can get to that acceleration zone a little faster because you have just more muscle behind it. But you still have to eat up the wealth. No one gets away from getting away from the wealth flatline. And that's the key. Right now, I look at it and like I just had my meeting. I do a semi-annual meeting face-to-face with my wealth team, and we just went through it. It will grow. The machine just grows and grows and grows on its own, and it will earn more than I can probably make. Yep. On its own. Yeah. Without me doing anything.
And just hearing the validation, the reminder over and over again that if you stick to the habits now, no matter how old you are when you're starting this, that you can get to that point. And I want to kind of fast forward to the moment where you realize you really got how important it was to have your money machine set up, because you were thrown a huge curveball and you were able to make some choices because you had set yourself up to be able to totally step away from your business. Do you want to share that story?
Yeah, you were on the journey with me.
Yeah. It was right before we met in the mastermind.
Yeah. So I said, Jeremy is the one that taught me the importance or the idea of the money machine. And then in June of 2019, everything was going great. I've got my businesses, they're doing well. I'm making money. I'm speaking on some of the largest stages. I'm masterminding. And I find out that they find a tumor in my bladder that turns out to be 7.5 centimeters. And the doctors came to me and said, it's got to come out, but it's on top of the prostate. So we might have to remove the prostate. We can't see the ureter on the right side, so we might have to put a bag and a tube in. And if it's bad, you're going to lose your bladder. Like, And I'm like, whole life got turned upside down. I'm not a smoker. I'm not really a drinker. I had a sweet tooth, but I was a healthy person. No one in my family ever had cancer. How did this happen? And so I knew when they were there, my son was there, my wife was there, and I looked at both of them. I said, life's changed. And I got to shut everything down because I got a battle on my hands. You know, it wasn't that easy. Trust me, I spiraled into bitterness. We cried. Stephanie and I cried for a whole day, you know, and then finally we said, this is the hands we were dealt. How are we going to fight it? And so we shut everything down, and I had to fight the cancer spiritually, energetically, medically. I had to fight it emotionally. I had to go through the surgeries. They took out 4 tumors. I had 3 surgeries. I had 57 treatments, and I was going through all of that. But the one thing I didn't have to fight was I didn't have to fight it financially. That what I had the opportunity to do, and this is, so if Jeremy taught me about the money machine, the cancer taught me the importance of it. Because what I was able to do during that time is say, I'm going to shut everything down. And I talked to my team. I said, turn the machine on. The money that it was growing is now going to come to us to pay for our lifestyle. And it'll just grow slower. It wasn't that it stopped growing, and it didn't shrink. So I wasn't draining accounts. I wasn't draining savings. I wasn't selling stuff. I wasn't having to get rid of things just to survive. I was able to sustain it and still grow and have the peace that I could choose my doctors, I could choose my path, and I could choose how my energy is used during that fight. And this, you know, June 2019 is when it came out, when this happened. Well, pandemic was right after that. And I watched so many people struggle. And if they only understood simple principles, I'm not saying it's easy to do because it's contrary to society, it's contrary to our upbringing. We don't talk about it, but it's simple. And if we just did it, they wouldn't have struggled during the pandemic, at least not financially. They would have had the opportunity to sustain themselves, to take care of themselves, and be better off for it. And that's why the book was done. That's why I do what I do now.
Right. I can only imagine the stress that removed from you, from your beautiful wife, to just be able to focus your energy on healing. And so whether it's an illness down the road for any of us, or maybe it is just a desire to pull back, to not have to second guess that if we're ready to enter a different season of life and focus on being parents or focus on being grandparents, whatever that is, there's not a money question in the midst of that.
Yeah. So a lot of people don't know. So just recently, September 8th, I go in for regular scans. It's a high recurring cancer. So my surgeon said, you're in a relationship with me the rest of your life. And I said, well, that's good. All right. So we went in on September 8th. I have all these dates are like etched in my mind. And so for a scan, and there was no masses. He said, I see no masses. Everything looks good. But I see this shadow on the wall. And I go, ooh, what do you mean? He says, well, it doesn't show under the blue light. It shows under the white light. So here's what we need to do. I'm going to take a sample, and if it's nothing, it might be inflammation. I'm not sure why it would be inflamed. We'll just bring you in sooner for the next scan and check it. But if it comes back as cancer, you're going back in for surgery. So like there was this moment of me going, oh, yeah, you're right. It could come back. But I had to struggle with it again. I had to fight with it again. But what it caused me to do is to revisit the money machine and say to Stephanie, and I said, what are the things I'm doing that I don't need to do? And there's a couple things that I realized I was doing because we looked at it and said, there's no reason for the cancer to come back, except I knew that I allowed some stress back into my life that didn't need to be there, and I wasn't getting the sleep that I needed because the diet, the hydration, all the stuff that I was doing before, I still did. So what changed that could have caused it? And so we looked at it and said, all right, we got to retire those things. We got to stop those things. So I had the opportunity to make choice, to have that life of choice. Now, that 2 weeks of limbo was hell, but came back that it was nothing. It's inflammation. They don't know what it is. So I go back in a couple months for another exam, and we just stay on it and everything. But it was a reminder that choice is important. And the machine gives us choice.
So these were things, income-producing things you were doing that you realized, oh, I let too much come back onto the plate. That doesn't need to be. It
wasn't what came back onto the plate. It was how what came back onto the plate made me feel. There wasn't the fulfillment, the joy in it. And I was doing it as a transaction. And sometimes transactional doesn't bring fulfillment. You're doing it. You're just doing it for the money.
Right.
And then I sat back and go, why? I don't need the money. Why am I doing it? Why am I stressing myself out? Why am I having sleepless nights? Why am I allowing that back in when I didn't need it? Maybe there may be times that you need to do that. It's a season of life. But I was in a season that I didn't need to do it. And so I said, I let my choices get away.
Yeah. Something we can all relate to on different levels. I can't wait for this book to get into people's hands. I'm lucky enough to have a copy of it before it's even officially out in the world. And very soon, you'll be able to get your hands on it. So tell us a little bit of what we didn't cover today that they can expect to get in the book. And then, of course, where we can find it, where we can pre-order copies and be first to get this in our hands.
Oh my God, thanks for this. It's called Building Your Money Machine. And it's how to get your money to work harder for you than you did for it. And you're going to find in there that this is not a typical money book. It was intentionally written this way. I tried to simplify it. I tried to give you frameworks. I tried to give you action plans. But it is part philosophy. It's part life. It's part legacy. And it's part money put together. And I walk you through everything from that whole idea of how do you create and craft your vision so then you can use the vision to inform the plan. How do you strip away the fears that hold us back when it comes to money and money choices and money decisions? How do you bring that into your family? How do you have the conversations that in a situation where financial is one of the biggest stressors in a relationship, how do you use it to bring you together?
Yeah.
And make a deeper connection and step by step what to do in the process to build the wealth. How do you look at investments? What are the things to look for? How to simplify it, how to protect it. And then the last section is really about legacy. And I have a very different view on legacy. We always, when someone talks about legacy, they think about it as, it's what I leave behind when I leave. Oh, no. Legacy is far bigger than that. And we don't have to die to have legacy. We need to live to have legacy. It's not what we leave for someone. It's what we leave in someone. And we talk about how do you take that machine and create the legacy that lives beyond you, to live a life that outlives you in a way that still has the impact, still has the generosity, and still has the meaning that you wanted to do. And so the book is a money book, but it's so much more.
So much more, as are you. And every time we're together, I feel like I learn something new about you. I told you this. You're really the most interesting friend I have. Well, that'll maybe be a whole separate podcast. But I want you to tell us, of course, where we can get the book. So I don't know if we said the URL.
No, you can go to yourmoneymachinebook.com is where to get it.
Okay, perfect.
And we have some gifts and stuff for people there too.
Yes.
That get it. And the biggest gift is that you'll put yourself on the path to financial freedom.
And pay it forward, pass it along to someone else.
Yeah.
I think this is actually a really, really powerful book to read with accountability partners. People who you're going to go through this journey with, where you're changing habits, especially if this is brand new. Changing habits can be really, really difficult. And for me, what's always worked really well is accountability. So I can't wait to do that.
Yeah, I love that idea. And if you're in an intimate relationship, your financial journey is a couple's journey. It's
Yes.
not a silo journey.
Yes, yes. So, Elliot, that's for you. We're going to be reading this together. You know, when we first started dating, we were long distance, and we used to do book club, and we would like read the same book at the same time.
Oh my
How cheesy
God.
is that? So now here's our next book club book. But Mel, I just adore you. I adore the person that you are, the impact that you make. You have shown up so big for me and for Elliot, and we're really honored to have you in our lives. And I'm celebrating you today for that. But there's a question we ask all of our guests at the end of this podcast, which is an
I don't
opportunity.
know what the question is.
Well, you probably have heard it because you've listened to the podcast. So now it's going to come back. But it's really just an opportunity for you to acknowledge yourself for something that you've done that's great. We just call it a powerhouse moment. And it can be anything big or small, but just an opportunity right now. When I say, what's a recent powerhouse moment you've had? What's the first thing that comes to your mind?
Gosh, I just think that it's simple, but asking yourself each night, did I show up today for the people that I cared about? It's so easy to take for granted for me, like especially with my wife, is that am I present for her? Because when it comes down to it, my intimate relationships, the people that are close to me, that's where the richness comes from. I mean, we've been given the three gifts, a gift of time, how are we going to use it? A gift of talents, how are we going to develop them and use them? But the gift of treasures.
Yes.
And the treasures are the people we get to share things with. And we too often think that they'll just be there. And maybe we ought to make sure that they're there. And so I try to each day just try to live and know that if I stack meaningful moments together, then I create the legacy that I was meant to do. So it's really me living moment to moment in a present state.
Yeah. And you do that in every single way. And I get to be on the receiving end of it so often. So thank you for being here. Everyone go get your copy of the book. And Mel, just thanks for being who you are in the world.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This was awesome.